Rhaenyra Targaryen is finally the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, at least in the sense that she sits on the Iron Throne. She was crowned on Dragonstone after her father's death, and there will likely be a similar ceremony confirming her ascension in the capital as well, but half of Westeros is still fighting in her name and underneath her banners, and yet, if you read any official document regarding the lineage of House Targaryen's kings, you won't find her name anywhere. So why is that the case? Why is Rhaenyra not considered a queen by the official history of Westeros? We'll be answering that question on all levels in this video, so strap on your spoiler hats and let's get into it. The curse of male primogeniture. Why Rhaenyra was never going to be a queen. The biggest reason Rhaenyra isn't remembered as a ruling queen in her own right is because she's a woman. There's no two ways about it. Westerosi society, by and large, follows the concept of male primogeniture. That means that the oldest living male heir of the head of the family follows them as the new head of the family. There are several instances from the books where families have gone out of their way to elevate male claimants from cadet branches or distant relatives, as opposed to placing a woman in a seat of power. Sweet Robin Arryn's heir is Sir Harold Harding, whose Arryn blood doesn't even come from the male line. Harry is the son of Alice Arryn, the sister of Jon Arryn, who himself was Sweet Robin's father. Harry's father was no more than a landed knight, and he's fostered by House Waynwood because his Harding father married the Waynwood daughter of Lady Alice. Robb Stark, who had two kingdoms' fates connected to his succession, had only one heir available to him outside of his family and marriage, and that successor was born to House Royce, which has blood ties with the Starks. Keep in mind that Robb doesn't know that Bran and Rickon are alive, but he does know that Sansa is still alive, and he doesn't even consider naming her his heir on account of her marriage to Tyrion Lannister, but also her gender. It's true that there are many powerful women as well, like Barbary Dustin, who rules Barrowton despite being a Reeswell by birth and only connected to House Dustin through marriage to her late husband, but even that right is something that was created under Targaryen rule because the widow's law was established during the reign of the fourth Targaryen king, Jaehaerys the Conciliator. Before the widow's law was passed, widowed noblewomen were frequently sent back to their girlhood homes or denied any of the rights they previously enjoyed as their lord's ladies. Even today, there isn't a single Westerosi house where a woman inherits the seat of power because she's the eldest of her father's brood, except in Dorne, where the customs are entirely different. In Dorne, primogeniture is engendered so an heir can be male or female as long as they're the eldest. And the crazy thing is that House Targaryen seems to have had a similar tradition which they broke away from on account of their policy of assimilation. Before Aegon the Conqueror decided to raise the three-headed dragon standard of House Targaryen, all Targaryens living on Dragonstone probably followed a pure primogeniture format. Under that format, Visenya Targaryen should have been the rightful High Queen of Westeros because she's the eldest of the three conquering siblings, but because Aegon was an invading king who needed to bind himself to a society that viewed his family's customs as alien traditions, he decided that he needed to become more Westerosi in order to conquer Westeros. Aegon's standard was a product of this mindset because the Valyrians didn't fly flags to herald their approach. He was anointed as king by the High Septon in the Starry Sept of Oldtown, which was the seat of the faith before being moved to King's Landing. After becoming the king, Aegon adapted to Westerosi customs and laws instead of introducing Valyrian traditions, which were restricted to House Targaryen exclusively. In fact, Aegon's immediate successors had to go to war to defend even the traditional practice of familial incest, which the Targaryens had been performing for countless centuries. Things changed a bit during Jaehaerys' reign, with laws like the Widow's Law being introduced and barbaric traditions like the First Night being outlawed. The Conciliator managed to get an exemption on incestuous marriages for House Targaryen, though he couldn't do much about legitimizing polygamy. Yet, even he couldn't change his outlook on male primogeniture, which was as ingrained within Westerosi society as the laws of hospitality. In fact, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, were generally seen as the best Targaryen royal couple of all time, had to mend two great rifts between them, both of which stemmed from the curse of male primogeniture. Jaehaerys' own firstborn child was actually a girl whom the king and queen named Daenerys. She died before she became old enough for the succession talk, and Jaehaerys' second surviving child was a man, so that conversation wasn't revived by Alysanne until the day Aemon Targaryen and Jocelyn Baratheon's first child also turned out to be a woman. Alysanne wanted Rhaenys to succeed Aemon and therefore Jaehaerys, but the old king stuck to his grandfather's ideals and refused to offend House Targaryen's recently gained Westerosi allies by attacking one of their oldest traditions. Of course, even when Rhaenys was given something of a fair chance at claiming the crown through the Great Council of 101 AC, the nobility of the realm cemented their preference for male rulers by electing her cousin, Viserys, as king. But that isn't the only sign that Rhaenyra was cheated out of recognition by the history books. The way Alysanne petitions for pure primogeniture's precedence, going so far as to remove herself from court when Jaehaerys doesn't agree, tells us that originally, House Targaryen didn't have gender restrictions on succession. She says that to rule, a cock is not essential, and this tradition also explains why Visenya Targaryen was so intent on having her son Maegor succeed Aegon the Conqueror. Aegon's official successor, Aenys, was older than Maegor, but he was born to their youngest sibling, Rhaenys. Visenya was older than both Aegon and Rhaenys, and so she must have viewed her son, Maegor, as coming before Rhaenys and Aenys based on pure primogeniture law. This divide between inheritance laws and the unspoken Targaryen policy of assimilation meant that when it came to foundational questions like succession, the Targaryen kings would always defer to Westerosi precedents. And this is the #1 cause behind Rhaenyra's reign not being officially recognized by any source of learning within the Seven Kingdoms. She wasn't just a woman. Her father appointing her as his heir was perceived as a placeholder decision by much of the realm, considering the decision of the Great Council. And as soon as Viserys had sons through Alicent Hightower, the same lords who saw Rhaenyra as a placeholder now threw their support behind Alicent because, presumably, the king was only waiting for his sons to come of age before quote-unquote fixing the line of succession. We see this mentality reflected in the timeline of the main series as well, because the only characters that acknowledge Rhaenyra as a legitimate ruler happen to come from Dorne, where pure primogeniture is practiced. Stannis Baratheon, whose family opposed Rhaenyra during the dance, once said that Rhaenyra usurped her brother Aegon's crown by pressing her own claim. And that's all the information you need on how women in general are perceived in Westeros. It's not like Stannis didn't get the best education available in all the land. He most likely knew all about Viserys appointing Rhaenyra his heir in a lavish ceremony attended by every great house in the realm, but he still rejected her claim on account of her sex. So, based on everything we've just mentioned with regards to women's place in Westerosi high society, the differences in primogeniture across cultures, the widow's law, and the precedents set forth by the Great Council, we'd like to ask you guys whether Rhaenyra was even given the chance to prove her worth as a successor by society at large. Based on these factors, she would have been lucky to be granted Driftmark on account of her marriage to Laenor Velaryon, and that's precisely how many in-universe think of her, both during her lifetime as well as decades after. Discrimination is the #1 reason that official Westerosi history doesn't count her among the Targaryens that ruled over Westeros, but it isn't the only one. Her tyrannical occupation of King's Landing. One aspect of Rhaenyra's rule that isn't addressed by the books is the fact that she's supposed to carry forward the prince who was promised prophecy. House of the Dragon has highlighted her role in the preordained destiny of the Targaryens from the very first episode, which gives her claim a lot more legitimacy in the eyes of the viewers. Rhaenyra doesn't want to become queen, she has to become queen because the future of the world depends on it. But in the books, that isn't the case because the books don't use obscure engravings on knives as a symbol of power or legitimacy. In fact, Rhaenyra comes off as a grasping figure in Fire and Blood who cunningly shores up alliances she knows she'll need to secure her claim if it's ever doubted. In the books, Aegon II rules from King's Landing for a lot longer than he does in the show, and all the actions that are attributed to him by the show are actually his in the books. He devises the Green's plan to bring in the Triarchy, to go after the Blacks with 2 dragons, and to escape the city right before Rhaenyra shows up. That agency, as well as his gender, make Aegon seem like a king that's a lot more active and involved in the books than he is in the show. And that's not all. The show has Rhaenyra send aid to the people of King's Landing while her blockade of the Gullet is still in place, so she starts currying favor with the populace even before she lands in the city. In the books, that's not the case, yet the people of King's Landing cheer her as she takes the throne because that's how much they've hated Hightower rule. The first few days of Rhaenyra's reign go off as smoothly as they can, considering the realm is still in the midst of a civil war, but as the days progress, it becomes clear to the people that Rhaenyra isn't going to be a great queen forever. In fact, some of her policy decisions make the people of the capital turn on her much quicker than they would have turned against the Greens. Two of these decisions involve her raising taxes and sending Knights Inquisitor to find and execute every person that helped Aegon escape the Red Keep. As the weeks and months roll by, the number of heads adorning the Red Keep's crenellations keep increasing, as do the taxes on the small folk, until finally, things come to a head and the city devolves into chaos and rioting. Rhaenyra only occupied the Iron Throne for 6 months, and yet, in those 6 months, she turned her capital against herself, failed to quell the riots of King's Landing, turned several of her allies against her, and had to flee the very place she'd vowed to capture and protect. For all intents and purposes, her reign was so short and mired by controversy and violence that historians preferred to skip over it, especially because Aegon actually manages to return to the throne by the end of the war. If the winner takes all, including the mentions in the history books, then Aegon and the Greens won the Dance of the Dragon's main conflict, and by virtue of that victory, Aegon's self-imposed exile becomes a daring escape and the years of his reign remain intact. There's also the slight issue of her coat of arms, which is nowhere near being an acceptable royal standard. In the show, Rhaenyra flies the traditional heraldry of House Targaryen, a 3-headed dragon on a black field. Aegon II's Greens have replaced the red dragon with his golden sunfire, keeping the heads at the same number and changing the night black field to Hightower green. This simple visual language allows us to make a clear distinction between the two royal branches, but in the books, Aegon's golden dragon is on Targaryen black, and Rhaenyra's banners are quartered with the arms of her Arryn mother and her Valerion first husband. A quartered banner displays descent from and allegiance to more than one house, and as far as we know, Rhaenyra never reversed her colors to the traditional Targaryen heraldry. The only symbol of power she possessed was her crown, which belonged to her father, whereas Aegon had Blackfyre, the Conqueror's crown, the support of the small council, and children who looked like Valyrians. From a pure visual standpoint, Aegon was born to become the rightful ruler of Westeros, and as we all know, how a person is perceived is a lot more impactful than what they really are when it comes to politics. So, from her lack of symbols to her quartered heraldry to the fact that the very people who rejoiced at her arrival rebelled against her in a period as short as 6 months, public perception of Rhaenyra being tyrannical made it acceptable for historians to delete her from the line of Targaryen rulers. Despite King Viserys issuing a royal decree declaring her his heir, the enforcement of that decree was thrown to the wayside when the Greens restored quote-unquote tradition to the Iron Throne and rendered Rhaenyra's entire claim inert, and the Black Queen couldn't exactly use a prophecy her dad told her about in secret as the basis for her takeover, now could she? It might have worked on Alicent in the show, because in the show she's childhood friends with the Green Queen, but in the books, they're rivals from the beginning. And if Book Rhaenyra told Book Alicent that she needed to become queen to save the world, that would have been painted as the maddest gambit for power that anyone's made in the history of the Seven Kingdoms. So, a lack of proper symbols of power, primogeniture preference, her quartered arms, and her unrelentingly persecuting nature invalidated Rhaenyra's 6-month reign as queen in King's Landing in the eyes of many, both highborn and lowborn alike. But that isn't even the complete picture, ladies and gentlemen, because there's yet another major reason that Rhaenyra isn't remembered as a queen, and that's the matter of her succession. The incredibly complicated question of succession, why Targaryens claim descent from Rhaenyra yet don't acknowledge her. Apart from all the prejudice we've already discussed in this video, one of the biggest reasons Rhaenyra was never officially recognized as queen is the fact that her most visible heirs were never seen as wholly legitimate. Rhaenyra Targaryen had 3 sons from her marriage to Laenor Velaryon. Now, in the show, there's absolutely no doubt that these 3 are bastards. House of the Dragon streamlined Valyrian features to just their silver blonde hair, and as soon as you spot anyone claiming to be a Targaryen but not having that classic hair color, you can immediately question their parentage. Even Hugh and Ulf, who have one Targaryen parent each, have enough of that iconic hair color to be instantly recognized as dragon seeds, whereas Jace, Luke, and Joff take after their father entirely. They have the dark hair and dark eyes of Sir Harwin Strong, and we initially see Harwin acting like a father to them in Season 1. In the books, the ambiguity of Jace, Luke, and Joff's parentage has more legs to stand on because their immediate parents look more like full-fledged Valyrians, but the generation before theirs did not. Laenor's mother, Rhaenys Targaryen, had Baratheon black hair in the books, and her mother Jocelyn had the same. Rhaenyra's mother, Aemma Arryn, is never described in the books, and though we know she was half Targaryen herself, there's always the possibility that her Arryn husband had dark hair or eyes, or both. And both these external lineages could have multiple dark-haired and eyed ancestors going back into their long history, meaning Jace, Luke, and Joff could have inherited their look from their grandparents instead of their parents. In the show, Rhaenys has Targaryen coloring, and so does Aemma Arryn, so the ambiguity simply doesn't exist, and the claims of bastard are more readily accepted. In the books, Rhaenyra had a technical out, and there was also the fact that her sons were a lot more involved in the dance itself. In House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra is the coddling, overprotective mother who doesn't let her kids do anything until she's convinced otherwise. In Fire and Blood, Jace does many of the things Rhaenyra does in the show, like naming Corlys Hand, coming up with the Red Sewing, and the idea to send Rhaenyra's youngest sons to Pentos and planning the Battle of the Gullet. He was the most visible of Rhaenyra's sons, and he was accepted as Crown Prince everywhere he went, based on his conduct and agency as much as his name. Even if he was a bastard, his disposition alone would have made him a great future king, whereas Aegon's children were all infants, and no one wanted Daemon or Aemond in charge. By contrast, Jace's pouty and rebellious nature in House of the Dragon feels childish, and he's a lot more reactive than he is strategic. His deal with the phrase was a reaction, not action, and so was the mistake that got him killed. But why are we talking about bastardry and competency right now? Well, because in the books, Rhaenyra's succession was technically more secure than it is in the show, seeing as Jace was a proactive part of his mother's war council, made himself known to several lords, great and small, and took decisions that improved the Blacks' war prospects as well. People would have accepted him as the king for those reasons, and his extended ancestry could have potentially explained his dark hair and eyes. But in the show, there's no doubt that Rhaenyra's sons are Harwin Strong's bastards, and they went so far as to have that declaration made in the throne room of King's Landing. By having children out of wedlock, Rhaenyra has not only committed high treason, she's thrown her succession completely out of order because her 3 eldest sons are half Targaryen and not fully eligible to inherit. In Westeros, bastards don't have their father's or mother's names for a reason. They might fight in their father's name, but they won't inherit the family colors. Technically speaking, Rhaenyra's only legitimate sons are Aegon and Viserys, whom she had with Daemon because they're born from an official marriage with witnesses. So, already, all 3 of Rhaenyra's eldest children are ticking time bombs because of their parentage, and the Greens don't miss a single chance to exploit this. Alicent's line about Laenor, where she says keep trying and one day you'll get one that looks like you, is taken directly from the books, and word of the illegitimacy of Rhaenyra's eldest boys is a major contributing factor to her being disavowed from history. The only other Targaryen ruler with recognized bastards is King Aegon IV, and he's called Aegon the Unworthy for a reason. Sure, Rhaenyra could have legitimized her children herself after she became queen, but what kind of message would that send? And on top of that, her kids stood to inherit 3 of the most powerful seats in the 7 kingdoms at the time: Dragonstone, High Tide, and King's Landing. None of Aegon the Unworthy's bastards are remembered in a wholly positive light for a reason, and when he legitimized them on his deathbed, the entire realm cursed him. He created several challengers to the throne for absolutely no reason, and a messy succession is the root of all wars in the 7 kingdoms, as the main story can attest to. The only reason Dany was more readily accepted in the TV show is because she was truly the last living Targaryen, and when you're the last of your line, your gender doesn't really matter because you're the sole representative. But in the books, there's another Targaryen that has resurfaced in young Griff, aka Rhaegar Targaryen's son and the supposed King Aegon VI. Though fans believe this Aegon to be an imposter, he's already invaded and conquered 80% of the Stormlands, and if he defeats the army representing the Iron Throne in the field, he'll immediately be recognized as a legitimate challenger to Lannister power. If Aegon VI actually takes the Iron Throne, then when Dany finally arrives in Westeros, we'll have a situation that's similar to the dance, considering fans also think that this Aegon VI is secretly a Blackfire and therefore illegitimate from the start. We have a feeling that when the story ends, Daenerys Targaryen will be remembered just as much as Rhaenyra Targaryen was, at least in the official histories. And this is also one of the biggest reasons why Rhaenyra was never officially recognized. Spoiler warning for the end of the series, because we need to talk about endgame scenarios now, but we didn't exactly give you the full Stannis Baratheon quote earlier in the video. Stannis also says that Rhaenyra was the daughter of a king and a mother to 2 other kings before talking about her as the usurper. This is because in the Dance of the Dragons, both rival claimants die trying to hold the Iron Throne. Aegon kills Rhaenyra, and then his counselors kill him. At that point in the story, Aegon has lost both sons, Jaehaerys and Maelor, and Rhaenyra doesn't have any male members left to represent her. Daemon died with Aemond during their battle above the God's Eye. Jace and Luke were already dead, and Joff dies during those riots we mentioned. Only Aegon and Viserys survived the dance, and because Aegon was the eldest living male Targaryen at the time, he was declared the new king of Westeros. He became King Aegon III, and while Black supporters can look at this as Rhaenyra's victory, considering her son sat on the throne in the end, the official history goes in a different direction. Officially, it's believed that Aegon drew his claim from his father, not his mother, because Daemon was Viserys' brother, and Aegon III is Aegon II's cousin / quarter brother / nephew. Targaryens. Ish. In fact, to seal Aegon III's ascension, he was betrothed and later married to Aegon II's daughter, Jaehaerys, which unified the splintered Targaryen bloodlines into one. For official history, both these marriages were green marriages, but from our perspective, Rhaenyra's son won, and therefore she did too. This is why all future Targaryens, including Daenerys, are direct descendants of Rhaenyra and Daemon. This is how the Prince That Was Promised prophecy finds its way down to Bloodraven and possibly beyond. And even though Aegon reclaimed the Iron Throne, his death and its aftermath made it evident that overall, the dance was won by the Blacks and not the Greens. The Greens lost all their male claimants, which is quite ironic considering male primogeniture was the foundation of their cause. The Blacks controlled King's Landing in the end, and if surviving Green forces didn't surrender, Lord Cregan Stark would have marched on their castles and forced them to do so. But we don't write the histories of the Seven Kingdoms, and the people who do prefer patriarchy and the established way of life to updating viewpoints and changing with the times. Archmaester Gyldain is a part of the Citadel, which is in Old Town, the seat of House Hightower. The Maester conspiracy is as real as any dragon we've seen on the show, and of the 3 sources Gyldain referred to while writing Fire and Blood in-universe, 2 of them were part of the Green Court. Even though the Greens lost the war, they still had enough influence with the chroniclers of that war to paint themselves in the best possible light, and that includes removing Rhaenyra's name as competition entirely. We hope you now understand why this topic needed a whole video, but that's enough about our thoughts. What do you guys think? Should Rhaenyra have been given her rightful place in the history books? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more dragon content. We'll see you guys real soon with yet another video, so until then, stay safe out there and have a great day.